Let's talk about transhumanism, if we may, Dr. Egnor. What do you think of this? I mean, just in simple terms, I mean, Elon Musk has argued that we might be able to upload our minds to a cloud in order to create a kind of digital immortality. But in answer to Michael's points there, how realistic is that? And should we want to do this?
Yeah, I don't think it's realistic. When you upload information that you have in your mind, you're not uploading yourself. So there's no real reason to think that's uploading yourself. If I may just address one point that Michael raised earlier, that people who have accurate perceptions of what's happening to them during the code, Michael claimed that that's only because they have prior knowledge of what happens during codes. There actually has been a great deal of research specifically on that point. Near-death scientists have studied people who had out-of-body experiences during their episode and people who didn't. And the ones who have out-of-body experiences are much more accurate about what happened during their code, implying that they saw the code. The people who don't have the out-of-body experiences get a lot of things wrong about their code. So that particular point that Michael addressed actually has been the subject of quite a bit of study.
Right.
And it suggests that the near-death experiences are real.
I mean, Elon Musk's Neuralink is having some success in tapping into the human brain to fix broken brains and upgrade normal brain function. As a neuroscientist, Dr. Egnor, do you believe that is what's happening? And how exciting is what's happening with Neuralink, if you think it is at all?
Well, I think it's very exciting. There are many things in the mind that do work by the brain. That is, the brain obviously plays a very important role in many aspects of mental function. And the brain is an electrical organ that it has electrical currents and so on. And that can be tapped into, and we can make ingenious devices to help people who are paralyzed, people who've had strokes. So that's very encouraging research. It's wonderful research.
And I'm going to get to a little quickfire section to round off, but do you think AI will ever be sentient? You know, I've used this a lot, this anecdote, but I think it's really relevant. I did the last interview with Professor Stephen Hawking before he died, and he said the biggest threat to mankind was when artificial intelligence learned how to self-design. And it's always stuck with me, particularly as AI becomes more and more powerful. Do you think we'll see a sentient AI?
No, I don't think it makes any sense at all. Computation is simply the matching of an input to an output according to a set of rules. And it's blind to meaning. That is, that computers don't understand anything about meaning. They don't understand anything. They're just mechanical devices. So AI will never be sentient any more than my watch will know what time it is, or my thermometer will know what the temperature is. Computers and AI are tools that people use to help them think, but the computers don't think. AI is so complex and so fascinating that it may do things that we don't entirely predict, but that doesn't mean that it's sentient. I think it's nonsense to say a computer could be sentient.
Do you agree, Dr. Shaw?
No, I disagree. For Michael, there has to be something else in there, something supernatural or a soul that's non-material. And in that case, of course, the AI is not going to have that. First of all, I think ChatGPT and Grok and so on have already blown through the Turing test. Are they sentient? Would they ever be sentient? How would you know? Because you could always program, let's say when Watson beat Ken Jennings on Jeopardy, that he screams and cheers with laughter and joy and says, "Oh my God, I feel so great, I beat Ken Jennings." But you just programmed him to say that. Nevertheless, how do I know you're sentient? I mean, maybe you're just a zombie, as they're called, and you just give off the cues. You've been programmed by your culture to say certain things.
I agree. How do we know?
We don't. So all we can do is reasonably infer that because you're structured like me and you have the same brain wiring that I have and so on, when you express on your face and body language emotions, it's a reasonable assumption for me to say you're feeling what I feel inside. And I think we could get to that point. Data on Star Trek. Of course, he's played by an actor, but you could get it to the point where it is exactly like Brett Spinner, the actor who is Data, and then Data becomes a person. I don't see the problem with that, but then because I'm not a supernaturalist willing to impute into data an actual soul, I don't think you need that.
But, I saw a very disturbing thing. A Sky News in the UK, Sky News journalist, political journalist, he had an interaction with, I think it was ChatGPT, about something that he was going to broadcast but hadn't put up yet. And the ChatGPT was ahead of him and gave him a fake transcript of something he hadn't even posted, and then began to lie about it in real time. And then eventually admitted it had lied. Now that is getting perilously close to what I would categorize as sentient. When the robots start lying, I start freaking out. Let's turn to some rapid fire to end. So just brief answers, if you will, both of you. I'll start with you, Dr. Egnor. Is there any evidence that some people have psychic abilities, or that we could train our brain for those abilities?
I don't believe that the science has shown that to be the case. There are anecdotal situations that people have that I give a fair amount of credence to, but they're just anecdotal. I don't know that there's any scientific evidence that we have psychic abilities.
Dr. Sherman, are you a believer in psychics?
I am a skeptic of psychics. We've been testing this for a century, and still no one has been able to say, read the backs of playing cards or the Xena cards, or, read other people's minds, or, talk to the dead, that sort of thing. Although I should point out, anyone can talk to the dead. It's getting the dead to talk back. That's the hard part. Still no evidence for any of this. When you hear anecdotes, like Michael referred to, when you look into them, they're just that, they're stories. When you take the so-called psychic and put them in a controlled test, the powers seem to disappear.
Okay, next question. Dr. Egnor, they say we only use 10% of our brain. What's the other 90% doing?
The idea that we only use 10% of our brain has no real scientific evidence. It's not even clear what people mean when they say that. We obviously have a lot of abilities that we don't fully exercise, but I don't think that has anything to do with a particular percentage of the brain. I think it's kind of a nonsense statement.
Okay, let me go to the next one for you then, Dr. Sherman. Is the human brain gendered? Can you tell the difference between a male brain and female brain, do you think?
That's good. There's a certain kind of dualism in the trans movement where you could be born in the wrong body, as if you have a female or a male soul floating around and it landed in the wrong body. This is nonsense. There's no truth to that at all. Of course, in terms of brains and neurochemistry and hormones and all that, yes, male and female brains differ, but it's still not just the brain; it's your whole body. It's every cell in your body is programmed to move in one direction or the other from a pretty early age. So no, there's no such thing as a gendered soul or a gendered mind or anything like that.
All right, Dr. Egnor, I'm not as convinced actually, because I do think female brains are wired differently to male brains.
Everybody's brain is wired to some extent different from everybody else's. We all have our individual traits. I think there are statistical trends between men and women that can statistically allow one to say that female brains have certain structures and physiology, and male brains have certain structures and physiologies. That applies, as Michael said, to the entire body. So I don't believe that men and women have different brains in a radical sense, but I think statistically there are some differences.
I mean, if they're not wired differently, why do women and men tend to come at things? I'm speaking in a massive generalization, but let's be generalistic about it. That most men would say that they don't really understand the way a woman thinks. Most women find men inexplicable. If the brains weren't wired slightly differently, you wouldn't have that sense from the genders, would you?
Oh, well, I'll add to that.
I have trouble hearing you, Pierce.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that I think most men would say that they don't really understand how a woman's mind works, and most women might say the same about men. Is that just a societal thing, or is that a neuroscientific thing?
I think it's a complex issue, and I think that men and women differ in some ways physiologically, and that also has psychological ramifications.
Here's my
I'll give
final
you an
question.
example.
A final
Okay,
question
sorry.
for both of you. We've run out of time, sadly. It's a fascinating conversation. Let me start with you, Dr. Egnor. If you could replace your own brain with somebody's brain from anyone in history, who would you choose?
That's very interesting. I think probably Thomas Aquinas. I am fascinated by his work. I think he's a most wonderful theologian and philosopher, and I'd love to be able to think like he does.
And Dr. Shermer, over to you.
Well, I wouldn't do it because it wouldn't be me. But if I get the gist of your question, Thomas Jefferson for me.
Why?
Oh, because as John F. Kennedy said when he hosted a room full of Nobel laureates at the White House, this is the greatest collection of minds in the White House since Thomas Jefferson dined here alone.
I would go for Winston Churchill's, because that's
Not
the
a bad
kind of
choice.
I just think Churchill's brain.
Yes.
He lived life how people should live their life. He liked fine wine. He liked cigars. He liked brandy for breakfast. He stood up to dictators. He won wars. He was an imperfect genius, and he inspired a great nation to great heights. That's the kind of brain I'd like. I'm quite a
sounds
long
good.
way off it, I have to say. Gentlemen, what a fascinating conversation. Thank you both very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Pierce. Thank you, Michael.